Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is April the 28th, 2026. Of course, there's been a lot going on in America. The most recent assassination attempt on President Donald Trump by an African American who was a Caltech graduate. That's Paul Thomas Allen. And of course, there's been the murder suicide uh, by former Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, an African American male, in which he killed his wife, the dentist, Dr. Serena Fairfax. There's just been a lot going on. I did a video in which I said, maybe if the family of Justin Fairfax and his friends close to him had filed an emergency evaluation petition, or they'd uh, in Virginia, it's called emergency custody order, that this unfortunate, tragedy might have been averted. There's been other cases as well. There's been the ex-military man who murdered seven of his own children in Louisiana, all in April. So there's been a lot going on. Um, on top of that, there have been issues of race relations, racism, the Hispanic police officer who's an ex-Marine who got fired for her racist diatribes on social media. She recently did a video, which I saw this morning, in which she was apologizing. She was tearing up, saying, well, she needs to see a therapist. She needs to go to church, things like that. It's mental health, yeah, they always use mental health as their fig leaf. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is because it ties up to what I want to discuss today. I've been doing videos regarding an abuse of an emergency evaluation petition, right? That was used against me by a Howard University professor, uh, Dr. Jide Iwarere. Well, I don't care about his doctor. My mom, uh, well, anyway. So Jide Iwarere is not a medical doctor. He's an associate professor of finance, and he was misrepresenting himself as my uncle. He's not my uncle. There's no consanguinity between us whatsoever. But that's irrelevant. He was my emergency contact at the Department of the Navy. A few days before he filed his emergency evaluation petition, which was approved by a Judge Bibi M, whom I would later learn from the police that apparently they know each other well, that she knows Jide Iwarere very well. So there was a conflict of interest, right? So she abused her power. There's been an abusive process. This is what's been going on. In any event, a few days before that, Jide Iwarere had called me, trying to pressure me, right? Trying to pressure me to withdraw my petition, my complaint. I had an EEOC complaint in the federal government. That's my constitutional right. I was a career employee in the federal government, uh, career conditioned. I'd been originally hired as an accepted, uh, in the accepted service, non-competitive service as a John S. McCain fellow. Then I filed a complaint against a Jamie A. Simon, who's a citizen resident of Montgomery County, Maryland. Right, this involved this particular situation of she's white. I don't know. She's telling me she's Jewish. I don't know exactly how she identifies, but she's from Montgomery County, Maryland. She said her father was a physician in the National Institutes of Health. So the judge, of course, Judge James Bonifant, who was presiding over this and abused the process, I filed a complaint against him with the Commission on Judicial Disabilities. Is from Montgomery County, Maryland. So you see, there's a lot going on in Montgomery County, Maryland. Um, for some reason, Montgomery County, Maryland had started doxing me. So there's something called doxing, which they start posting the address of a federal official, somebody who works for the federal government, in order to intimidate and harass them and expose them to the public so they can be victims of violence, right? So I was swatted, and a swatting, I've explained what a swatting is. That's when it can be a false police report or false emergency crisis is made in order to generate an armed presence, a SWAT team, um, and it results in a violent act. The person who's being swatted is often uh, brutalized, right? Is also often assaulted by the police, by law enforcement. Sometimes they're killed. Swatting is actually a crime. So that's what happened. Jide Iwarere filed a fabricated emergency crisis that wasn't occurring, right? And he got the backing of the law through a judge, police said, knows him well, right? Knows him well. That's Judge Bibi M. So it was an entirely corrupt racket. Now, if the judge made an error in approving an emergency evaluation petition, right? That was abused, that was perjured, that was done in bad faith. It was clearly done in bad faith by Jide Iwarere. I can prove it. Uh, if she made an error, once she learns of the error, she's obligated, right, to correct that mistake, right, to avoid an injustice, a perversion of justice, right. She can vacate it. She's actually supposed to vacate, right. There's supposed to be a motion to vacate. I filed a motion to vacate. She's supposed to vacate that emergency evaluation, that order, right, nullify it, or revise the judgment. She's supposed to do that, and she is supposed to notify the state attorney's office so they can actually proceed with perjury charges against the petitioner who committed perjury. I've already done that myself. She failed to do that. She actually denied my motion to vacate. That's Judge Bibi after I was released, because it led to my swatting. I was assaulted on May 16, 2023. And then I was injured. The police shot me in the head. They tear gassed me. Incidentally, that day was scheduled for an appointment with the Department of the Navy for an apparent Navy General Officers Professions program to transition me as a military intelligence officer. I have an email verifying this appointment, right? It was originally scheduled for May 15. By phone, they rescheduled it to May 16, 2023 for 11 a.m. So a lot's going on. Jide Iwarere was aware of this. So prior to that, Jide Iwarere had been trying to get me to withdraw my EEOC complaint. I had an equal employment opportunity commission complaint. That's my constitutional rights protected by the First Amendment. We have the right to petition the government for a redress of our grievances. And it's my right as a federal employee. If I'm experiencing sexual harassment, hostile work environment, discrimination, that's my right. And it was going through the process. But for some reason, Jide Iwarere was now trying to pressure me to withdraw my complaint, saying, one, I already have a job with the government, right? And then two, the people I'm complaining about, they know powerful people, that they're more powerful than me. These were his words, and they will harm me. I don't know how Jide Iwarere knew these people had more powerful, that they knew more powerful people than me. I don't know how he knew this, right? I just laughed it off at the time. This was in May 2023. Um, the person, by the way, who asked me to file the petitions, right, was the Auditor General of the Navy. As far as I know, she's still the incumbent. Her name is Donjet L. Gilmore. She informed me that I shouldn't let anybody, my coworkers, my bosses, my supervisors, know that she was my mentor. She called herself my mentor for a year. We talked virtually every day for hours, right? The table I used in my apartment was minimalist. She gave me that table. She gave me the picture, the portrait in my apartment. She gave me two marble stools, right? She gave me the chair I sat on, the chair I used in my apartment. So she was helping me, right? That was what she made out. That was what I understood. So she advised me to file this petition, right? Uh, for against the misconduct that I suffered in the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy. A judge looks through it and it goes through the legal process, right? It goes through the EEOC complaint process. And if a judge approves it, it goes to a federal district court where I can file, a lawsuit. Um, and eventually, apparently, it made it there. But for some reason, uh, there was always a swatting. Montgomery County Judge James Bonifant would somehow remove me, get me locked up when there was a deadline for me to file uh, a complaint or lawsuits at the federal courts. He would lock me up. I was incommunicado. I couldn't do anything. So you see, there was something sinister going on, part of a sinister network. It's a RICO violation, that's Racketeering, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It can be used against government officials as well. It's also Hobbs Act. So the government, these judges, including Judge James Bonifant and Judge Bibi M, were abusing the authority to abuse the legal process, to obstruct justice, right, in a federal government case. Now, this is something that investigators, the FBI, the DOJ have to go about proving, right? What I was doing in the Department of the Navy is I was working as an auditor. I'm also trained as a lawyer. I have a Juris Doctor degree from George Washington University Law School. I have an MBA in accounting. So I was working as an auditor. And, you know, I have the training, the background. I did forensic science in law school as well. And so I'm able to, put my, I'm trained in forensic work, right, in analysis to be able to put together and analyze evidence, put evidence together, figure out a crime, theorize a crime. And, I could see from my experience what's going on, that there's been a sinister scheme to discredit me. And Montgomery County judges like Judge Bibi M were used in that process. The initial fraudulent process by a judge was precipitated by Judge Bibi M. She was the first one who initiated anything that was fraudulent, right? By the way, the emergency evaluation petition filed by Judge Bibi M. one, has since been recanted by Jide Iwarere himself. Second, I've done videos just analyzing the petition itself. When you look at the petition, it was a poorly filled out petition. It didn't show probable cause. There's a requirement for probable cause. Jide Iwarere did not mention that I committed any crime or I was about to commit any crime. There's no crime. There's got to be a crime, right? There's got to be a threat of a crime. There was no threat of a crime. Absolute zero. And Jide Iwarere he's a professor. He was cunning enough. He intentionally pulled wool over the eyes of Montgomery County officials, in this case, Judge Bibi M. He would later tell me that he was suborned by the police to commit perjury. He would claim that it was the Navy that told him to do it. For some reason, the Navy sent an unauthorized, according to the Auditor General of the Navy, an unauthorized termination letter to Jide Iwarere's house to deliver it to me, which was bizarre, right? It was completely bizarre. If they wanted to terminate me, they'd send me the termination letter to my home, but they sent it to Jide Iwarere to deliver it to me. So you see, there was something funny going on, right? So that's called all the stuff they did is called, it's a false flag operation. By the way, I was working as an auditor supporting the people I was supporting. Nefertari McBride informed me when we were in a classified area. So Nefertari McBride was the director of the directorate I was in, and she informed me that we supported the intelligence community, right? The work I was specifically doing, I'd supported Naval Criminal Investigative Service. I'd assisted, done work supporting Naval Criminal Investigative Service. So you can see they're into, if you're supporting or you're in a directorate that is supposed to support the intelligence community in the military, then you know that they're used to smokes and mirrors, creating false flags. And so that's what they did. When I reported my boss, one of the things I also did was I reported one of my bosses, Nathan R. Brown, for misconduct. He was under investigation at that time for conspiracy to offend and defraud the United States government, right? So you can see, so they did, in one of the ways that you can get a case, right? You can, if there's a case against you, one of the ways that you can get a case dismissed is if you can raise an issue regarding the mental status of that person. You say, well, the person who's making that accusation, right, before they go and do an investigation, you try and state that that person is delusional or they're mentally ill, they're unstable, so yeah, they're not reliable, that what they said is a fabrication. So you see, that was what the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense focused on, right? When I raised issues of misconduct of uh, my boss, my supervisor, and people that I saw were committing misconduct and fraud, right? So that's the scheme they instigated. One of the people that was used was Judge Bibi M. Jide Iwarere, by the way, again, he knew Judge Bibi very well. The Navy, the government has tried to indicate that they had nothing to do with it, that all of these things were instigated by Jide Iwarere himself, that he acted on his own, but it's a false flag operation. So they've shifted blame away from themselves. They've shifted it to Jide Iwarere, that Jide Iwarere did all of this, and they can leave the crumbs, the trails, to be able to mislead, right? To make a specious argument, right? That Jide Iwarere acted on his own. But you can already see the elements, that the Navy was involved, because why did they send a termination letter that's fraud? That the Auditor General has said it. She's written that down. She said, no, it's unauthorized. The Auditor General was my boss. She was the head of the agency I worked for. She was my mentor, right? She was my mentor. Somebody underneath her did something that was not authorized. She wasn't aware of it. And I told Jide Iwarere of this. I'd informed him. But, so what Jide Iwarere did was he went to file this fraudulent petition saying, well, I was fired as an auditor in the Department of the Navy, and it suddenly triggered me. In his emergency evaluation petition, in his statement, saying that, well, I insulted him when he came to my house, and I'd never done that before. He never states the mental illness that I have. He never states that I've ever been hospitalized before. He never states that I use medication for a mental illness. He doesn't even state my age. He doesn't state any relatives, because there's an opportunity to contact relatives, right, who might know. By the way, my aunt, my mother's first cousin, she's my blood aunt, right? She's a psychiatrist in the state of Maryland. She's a psychiatrist here in the state of Maryland. I'm close to her. I was talking to her a few days before this. Nobody, right? So nobody was aware of these apparent uh, symptoms that Jide Iwarere fabricates in his emergency evaluation petition, right? He doesn't state any specific crime, any threat that I pose. But Judge Bibi bizarrely found probable cause. So a judge can make a mistake, right? She can make a mistake. That's a risk she took in order to avert a crisis. But the thing is, as soon as I got out, right? As soon as I got out, I contacted Judge Bibi Berry's law clerk, right? Because I'm a lawyer. I graduated from George Washington University Law School. I contacted her law clerk, Shonetta Williams. I told her what happened. She gave me an email, asked me to write things in detail and stuff. I also I filed a motion to vacate, a motion to reopen, because these emergency evaluation petitions, they're done ex parte. That means ex parte means they're done with, it's just one party without the presence of the defendant, right? The other party. So they're not there to defend themselves. So again, there are requirements for an emergency evaluation petition, right, to be approved. That person must have a mental illness, right? They must. It's not speculation. You don't use an emergency evaluation petition to speculate, because Americans, I'm an American citizen, we have our 14th Amendment, equal protection of the law. You can't target people because of their race or for any reason and ask them to go and do an evaluation at a psychiatric hospital. You're taking away our liberty, right? The 14th Amendment also has due process, right? Due process of law. You can't take away our life, our liberty, right, or our property without due process of the law, right? So these are my liberty interests. My things that have to do with my mental illness, those are within my zone of privacy rights. So all of these were violated, right? Without my knowledge, I was never given notice, right? I'm entitled to notice, or my family, because I'm entitled to be able to dispute it, have a hearing. I never had a hearing. Immediately, she just sealed it. I never had a hearing, because the emergency evaluation petition, it's a defamatory, right? It's something that's defamatory, right? You're saying, because what they started to do was, and that's Judge Bibi, instigated it. She started to paper, right, to document negative defamatory information about me in public records. So she started to aid the falsification of government records, right? Uh, and that's also a federal crime. That's a federal crime. It's a violation of 18 USC Section 1001. So there are lots of things she was engaged in. She violated 18 USC Section 241 and 242, right, and 42 USC Section 1983. There are many things. It was a kidnapping under color of law. On top of it, apart from the police misconduct that occurred, the police stole my property. They injured me. When you go and deliver an emergency evaluation petition, there's a law in Maryland, right? You're not supposed to injure the evaluee because they haven't committed a crime. They're not criminals. It's their loved ones, their family that's saying, okay, this person, take them to, we're concerned about their welfare, their mental health or whatever. Take them to the hospital for an evaluation. That's not what happened to me. I've been locked up. I was assaulted. I was injured. I was almost killed. The police officer who came, Jeffrey Ray, called me an animal, used racial epithets on me, right? So it's a reason I was also pointing out to what's been going on, the cops, right? Judge Bibi Berry is a Black American. If she had taken the time to check out my profile and she saw that I had more degrees, twice as many degrees as she has, at least twice as many degrees. I graduated from Columbia University. I have an MBA in accounting. I've worked at very important places as a stockbroker, as a banker, in management consulting. I've worked for Booz Allen Hamilton. I've worked for Bank of America. I worked at Wells Fargo. At that time, I had been a John S. McCain Strategic Fellow at one time in the Department of Defense at the Pentagon. At that time, I was working as an auditor in the Department of the Navy. I had just been given a new job. I had a new job offer to work at the Pentagon, six-figure job in military intelligence as a subject matter expert. How is it that somebody who with this profile, how is it that they are suffering a mental health crisis for the first time? By the way, I let her know my age because Jide Iwarere intentionally did not include my age. Maryland psychiatrists have since said no, that I don't have a mental illness because they started doing all sorts of shenanigans, fraud through Judge James Bonifant, doing fraudulent incompetent stand trial orders. What Maryland does is they have a racket, and it's uh, constitutes Medicaid fraud, constitutional rights violations against minorities, violating their zone of privacy rights, and uh, they defame, coerce, blackmail, and wrongfully confine Black Americans and other foreigners as well. Or, I mean, naturalized U.S. citizens, right? Like me, I'm not a foreigner. And Maryland files false charges. The police will file false charges against you, and then they will now use it as blackmail to coerce you to let a judge rule by judicial fiat. So that's basically what's happening. Judges like Judge Bibi M. Berry, they're declaring mental illness on minorities, Black people, indigent people, foreign-born people. They're declaring them mentally ill by judicial fiat, so they can commit them, file false charges that they can't prove, are fabricated. They fabricate evidence, their cops fabricate evidence, and they coerce them, make their lives unbearable. Just sort of the stuff that was going on during the Great Depression with the Mexican repatriation, right? Localities, states, governments during the Great Depression, in order to force Mexican Americans that were American citizens to get them out of their jobs, states would file false charges against them. And it was the federal government, President Herbert Hoover, who induced them to do it, our 31st president. They would file false charges against Mexicans, lock them up, make them unable to work so they could vacate their jobs, right? And buy them tickets to go back to Mexico that they'd never been to. They were American citizens born here, but they'll make them leave America to self-deport. Sort of what's going on now, right? But this is with foreigners. But this happened with American citizens, those Mexicans, the Mexican repatriation during the Great Depression. About 300,000 to a million Mexicans were forced to self-deport. States, including Maryland, did file false charges against these Mexicans, it lock them up, make their lives unbearable. They can't get jobs, and they'll eventually self-deport to Mexico. And then they would have vacated their jobs, and white men would take over their jobs. I had a job when when Judge Bibi M authorized a false fabricated emergency evaluation petition against me. I've since written, in any event, I've since written a complaint with the Commission on Judicial Disabilities, because I went to the Attorney General's office after I was released. Anthony Brown, I'm connected with him on social media, right? So he asked me, he actually emailed me, I interacted with him, I corresponded with him. He referred me to his assistant, to his secretary. She asked me, okay, file a complaint with the Judicial Commission on Judicial Disabilities against Judge Bibi M. I did. Commission on Judicial Disabilities, I wrote a 60-page complaint, signed it on the oath in June 14th or June 16th, 2024. So anyway, June 2024. When I was wrongfully detained, when I was wrongfully committed for using a false incompetent stand trial order that's predicated on Judge Bibi M's ab initio, wrongfully approved perjured emergency evaluation petition. So, Commission on Judicial Disabilities, it was a 60-page complaint I wrote. Then they send you a boilerplate, boilerplate response, right? Saying, well, that it's factually unprovable, blah blah blah. So they will dismiss the case against Judge Bibi M, right? The person is, what's her name? Tanya Bernstein or something. She's director of she's investigative counsel. She sends these boilerplate responses. So you see, there's a racket in Maryland amongst their judges, amongst their attorneys. They don't hold their judges accountable in Maryland, in the state of Maryland. So I filed that complaint, but I filed another one. And then I filed a motion to vacate, motion to rehear. At least let's retry it, because my mom went to court in Nigeria. My mom appeared at the evaluation orders, competency evaluations, wrongly ordered by Judge Bonifant, right? My mom appeared. My mom told the quack state psychologist, crooked Dr. Smith, a white woman, my mom told her, my family is appeared. They got another one again. They got two quack doctors. One, Dr. Michael Mintz. My brother appeared. My brother's a journalist, works for the federal government in Nigeria. My mom appeared. They made this case that, one, Jide Iwarere is not my uncle. I have no history of mental illness. They made it clear. They put it on record. They asked her, do you see any sign of mental illness in this person? They said, no. She said, no. It's recorded. And then they continue this process of fabrication, right? So my mom went to court, the high court in Nigeria, went to court and filed a complaint and an affidavit on oath. Jide Iwarere is not my uncle. Everything he wrote, the petition was malicious, was fraudulent. Everything he wrote was a fabrication. We sent it to Montgomery County Court. They have it. My pastors have told the court, different people. My aunt wrote the court, the psychiatrist, different people. But they've persisted with their fraud and their malicious prosecution, all instigated by Judge Bibi M's ab initio wrongful approval of a perjured emergency evaluation petition that was filled with canards, fabrications from the demented mind of her friend, Jide Iwarere, the Howard University professor. Judge Bibi graduated from Howard University undergraduate. She got her law degree from Georgetown University. And I'm astonished. I'm going to continue this video. It's gotten long. And I'm going to show the documents that I filed, as a complaint to vacate the wrong authorization by Judge Bibi M. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.